Okay, welcome to the consensus layer call number 117. This is issue 854 in the PM repo. Focus today, obviously, I guess not obviously, but focus today will be on continued on Deneb. We'll talk about testnets. I do want to bring up the testing plan that was brought up a couple weeks ago and make sure that we've put some eyes on it and that we know who's going to be working on the CL P2P specific stuff, because I know it's kind of a high urgency, high concern problem for a lot of teams. Then we have promised to revisit the 484 mainnet parameterization. So Codex is here. They've been looking at some big mainnet blocks, so we can dig into that. And then if there's any other inputs or thoughts on the 2.4 versus 3.6 parameterization, we can discuss. I have attempt to form consensus on mainnet parameters. I actually don't know what the temperature gauge is going to be here, so I don't know if that's something we can do today or something we can reopen the conversation for in the future. And then Itan has a stable container proposal, which is, I think, an update to EIP 7495 that we can take a look at. Let's get started. Deneb, Dankun, Devnets. Are there any progress or discussion points worth bringing up today on our public call?
Everything is healthy. We have 100% block proposals, and all the nodes are up to the head. And I've just deposited some more validators for Aragon, so we're going to be able to check if Aragon is also able to make block proposals. And we have indeed all the clients.
Very exciting.
Wasn't there some clients that had some issues that kind of fixed themselves at some point?
Yeah, but everything has been fixed as of last night or this morning.
Do you know why they didn't want to sync in the first place?
Is anyone from Prism here? Maybe they can.
Yeah, Terrence has his hand up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can share some lesson learned. So why we did not see this issue before. So we found a bunch of issues with regard to saving the blob sidecar after the retention window. So it's funny. I'm happy we're got to test this for more than 18 days. So basically, the saving of the blob sidecar gets really messed up in the key index after the retention window. So the blobs are getting overwritten or deleted. So that's why we're having trouble syncing. So that's the first issue. The second issue is that we were using the wrong blob subnet count. So remember, we moved from 4 to 6, but we did not update the parameter. That's the blob subnet count. So we're subtracting the 4 subnets this whole time. So we also fixed that. And then the last issue is that we were funnily incorrectly hashing the hash root of the block that's inside the blob sidecar field. So we were hashing the block without the state root before putting the state root in the block. So basically all our sidecar had the wrong block root inside. So yeah, hooray to testing. I'm glad we figured out most of those issues within 24 hours.
Nice. Any other updates or comments related to Devnet 8?
Yeah, basically we have a
are we transaction spamming real quick and blob spamming? I assume so.
Yes, not fuzzing, just spamming for now.
Gotcha. Sorry, Justin, go on.
Yeah, real quick, we're investigating a potential issue with basically proposing empty blocks, but only with Lighthouse, which is weird. So Lighthouse folks expect me or someone from my team to reach out. Thanks.
So Michael's actually been looking into this on our team, and I think he's gotten to the bottom of it. We just haven't merged the fix for it yet. We were doing multiple fork choice updated. It's quickly in a row on proposal, and one of them had the incorrect parent beacon block root.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Other DevNet 8 discussion point. Okay. I believe where we left it at the previous call was not having a timeline for DevNet 9. I got murmurs that that was changing. Does anybody want to discuss DevNet 9?
Yeah, we said, I think on the Monday call that Devnet 9 should launch on Tuesday next week. That's the plan.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Any other things to share or discuss around that while we're here?
I would like some more time to update the Hive tests for the execution clients. I'm not sure if we're going to manage to update everything for Tuesday. So do we want to, does anybody else have, is everybody ready for, are all clients ready for Tuesday?
Base is ready.
I think the only change is how we're deploying the transactions, right?
Yeah, but we are also including more tests on the transient storage. We are also including more tests on the beacon root contract. And I'm including more tests on the Hive engine API simulator. So
it's all additional coverage, right?
yeah, it's additional coverage, but yeah, but it would be nice to have it before the launch.
I guess
Yeah,
we're gonna
and
need a couple of
also-
extra days, but we're gonna be quite busy. So if we don't do it on Tuesday, I think we will have to push it at least another whole week.
I think
So-
that's fine, considering the only change is really the transaction. And if we want to be more chaotic on DevNet 8, we can be next week.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so it's only extra coverage from Hive side. So if we find anything, even after the DevNet 9 has launched, we can just report it. And I don't think we are going to find anything that breaks DevNet 9, so it's okay.
Perry, were you saying the opposite and saying we could wait a week and just spam 8 more?
Yeah, I think I'd prefer just waiting a week and then having everything that Hive can catch get caught by Hive, and then just focus on causing more chaos on DevNet 8 next week. Considering that DevNet 9 is pretty much just DevNet 8, but with one change.
And builders, hopefully.
Yeah, but they haven't necessarily been working on local testnets yet, so another week for builders doesn't seem too bad either.
That's the direction I would lean in, but I wasn't a part of the call on Monday that made the decision to keep it moving quick.
We still have one PR open, 398, that I've been checking on whether we could merge that. It's the transaction and receipts. Is there any holdback for this? Or can we just get it merged and be done with it?
I mean, we need tests for it.
And are those a blocker to merging the PR or?
Yeah.
This is in the ETH API, not the engine API, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then.
Anyone
Okay,
from
is any-
EPF is listening. This is an easy project with high immediate value.
Is anyone strongly opposed to Devnet 9 being at +1 week from Tuesday rather than Tuesday? We can hopefully merge this PR and get the hype tests up. We can do more chaos on Devnet 8 and something else in there. But
Yeah, just one more thing for DevNet 9, we'll be doing Capella Genesis. As far as I know, Barnabas has already tested it and it works on all clients, but just still wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I haven't tested Ref just yet, but I think it should work also.
Okay, DevNet 9 at +1 week from Tuesday. Sounds good. Cool. Anything else on DevNets? Great. A couple weeks ago, Perry and team shared this document just on testing overview. There are some things in here related to CL testing, so probably things around network partitions or long-running forks and resolving those in the context of being able to get blobs or not if they're past a prune depth. Delaying blobs, delaying blocks and not blobs, like that kind of stuff. I think a number and just maybe some sync tests in the context of blobs based on conversations with consensus layer teams. You know, those are some of these like exceptional code paths related to the new P2P stuff around blobs are definitely some of the high priority concerns and items. So I just wanted to bring up the testing plan again and make this, I think a couple weeks ago we talked about this. Are our bases covered in terms of the tools and the people that are working on these things, or do we need to make a more concerted effort in the next few weeks to tackle some of those items I just discussed?
Just give some updates on this one. So sync testing, it looks like the Nethermind team has been running some sync tests themselves. I'll let them expand on that if someone from Nethermind is here. But you might have seen some results of that on the interrupt channel. We still haven't gotten around to updating our own sync test suite, so we're relying on the Nethermind team for that. Chaos testing is still a work in progress. We're hoping to get that done by the end of the month. We're kind of a bit held up because there's protocol bug soon, and we're trying to get some things prepared before that. And MEV related tests, there was an issue with MevBoost not being able to handle Capella at Genesis. And as far as I know, since as of yesterday, that's been fixed. And they're actively getting ready to test on local devnets. And I still wanted to ask if CL side have had a chance to try it with mock MEV mode on kurtosis. Because if that's working as well, then DevNet 9, we can already test the entire MEV workflow. But yeah, besides that, I will also, we're having a call with Mario after this, kind of, if someone's interested, feel free to join that one.
Great. And if anybody on consensus layer teams did have a chance to look at this testing plan since it was first introduced, are our bases covered? Are there glaring omissions that we need to make sure to shore up over the next handful of weeks? Okay.
So
Yeah,
I'm
go
just
on.
like briefly looking at it now, but do we want to deal with scenarios where the finalized checkpoint is further in the past than blob expiration, and like how do we recover from that? Because that would require a checkpoint sync from like an unfinalized checkpoint, I think.
Yes, I guess there's two things there. One is having a fork that goes beyond that depth. Well, I guess there's a number of things. You can have a fork that goes beyond that depth and actually show that you're not going to automatically resolve the fork because you can't do DA. And fork meaning a partition, because you could have done DA on the other fork even if you weren't seeing it as your head. And then there's the resolving from from those problems. I think that it's probably worth throwing what we can at it, and these scenarios are pretty exceptional and worth testing. Do you think does like Lighthouse, etc., work from starting from a non-finalized checkpoint from exclusivity, or is that just not something that's been coded up before?
I think it does, but it would be nice to test, especially if it's like it would be a requirement to recover from a scenario like this. So
Devnet 8 is already 20 days old or 22 days old, so it should have some expired blobs, and it only has a single archive node that should have all the blob data in there. So we should be able to do all these kind of tests on Devnet 8, I think.
Yeah, one of the things though is to make the network not finalized for the depth of the pruning period, so on the order of weeks, unless we change the parameterization of a testnet.
Is there actually any objection to change that for Devnet 9? Because we could do this test there and then keep the period as like 1 day or something.
Yeah, it's probably worthwhile having like a much shorter prune depth, because I think you can get a bit more chaos. It certainly changes the load requirement, because from a certain perspective, because the amount of data that blobs that are going to be stored locally for each one becomes much shorter. But I do think that if not DevNet 9, some sort of like side chaos net seems really valuable to put it on a pretty short prune depth, because I think things are going to fall out.
Sorry, but do you mean the ejection balance should not be 16, or?
No, the pruning period. So it's like 3 weeks parameterized, but you could make it half a day or a day. And you can do a lot more chaotic things around that threshold if you do so. Does that make sense?
How about
I know
once we're
that you-
happy with some base level of stability, we can just start like a line of testnets with attack nets called attack nets, leave devnets alone so people can do that tooling and stable testing. And then we can have all the chaotic testing on an attack net.
Yeah, I think I agree. Especially in the context of like, if we want DevNet 9 to look and feel like the thing that we're going to launch, it should probably look and feel like the thing that we're going to launch. Okay, cool. There's a testing call on Mondays. I think it was pretty low attended on the consensus layer side this past Monday. I think it's every other Monday. And I think as we are moving towards ironing out the final kinks, it's definitely worthwhile having some more attendance there. What is the pruning variable? It's in the P2P spec on Devnet. I can pull it up. Min epics for blob sidecar requests. It's a bit verbose. And I'll send the spec that it's within.
Right, so that's 4096 epochs at the default, which is 18
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
And
So, 128 or 256, half a day or a day. It probably gets weird if you make it really short, but might be worth playing with too.
okay.
All right, cool. Anything else on testing conversation for today? Great, thank you. So as I said at the open, it's even if it proves tough to make decisions today, it's time to reopen the conversation around the mainnet parameterization for the blob data gas limit. I think maybe that name was changed recently, but blob gas limit, essentially the gas limit. So Codex is going to kick it off. They've been taking a look at big mainnet blocks and the information we can parse out of that. Codex.
Thank you. Let me try to share screen. Okay, so do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear and see you.
Still see the
Well,
slides?
see your screen. That's what I meant.
Do you still see the slides?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so let me just quick background. So I'm Csaba Pillai from the Codex team. We are mainly working on decentralized storage, but we are also working with the Nimbus team on only P2P, and we are working with DEF with a grant on data variability sampling. And what we show here is a kind of a side product of that work. So as part of the data variability sampling, we were looking into gossip subperformance, and especially to understand how it works now on the network with big blocks and with small messages. We will not show that now. And then we also had some nice findings about big blocks now on the network. So let's just look into this, how big blocks work now on the mainnet. So that was the big block experiment by the Ethereum Foundation. I think you're all aware of this. So there was a capacity testing of the mainnet in which large transactions were submitted, which then made it into large blocks, which then got finalized. So here you see one example, one of these blocks that was 1 megabyte in size, and it was nicely finalized. So this would be a nice result for the experiments. Nice big blocks can be finalized, but the experiment was about much more. Besides sending these big transactions, which became into big blocks, DF was also setting up the Senti nodes. So I don't know how much you will. These Senti nodes were set up in 3 geographic locations. In each location, each CL client was running basically. Depending on the time period, a few of instances was running in these locations, and then metrics were collected per client implementation. So here you see the dashboard, which was shared previously, in which you see delays in seconds and some distributions of these. And here you see below the line dotted time instances when blocks were big. And we wanted to get a bit more data out of this. So we were looking into details. And this is what we got. So if you look into the latency data, and you look into the blocks, and then you categorize blocks according to block size, then you can basically plot how different block sizes are getting diffused in the network. Now, this is not one block diffused in the network, because for each block we have only a few measurements. But if we take a large number of blocks between 64 and 120 kilobytes, for example, and we have measurements on all of these, then from these we can plot a CDF. So what you see here as an orange curve, for example, is a large number of blocks which are with that size, and latency measurements on these. The latency means the latency compared to the slot start. So when client implementation was saying, I have received this block. And what you see here is what we expect. So the bigger the block, the bigger the delay. The point that you see here that highlighted is 6428 kilobyte block. 80% of blocks arrives before that time, which is kind of 2 seconds, a little bit less than 2 seconds. So this is very nice. We've seen things arriving. We've seen the increasing delay. We wanted also to quantify this delay, but we were running into a few problems. And the problems was that looking at different client implementations, we were seeing different numbers. So the figure that I was showing you was for Prism. But then if we look into the different clients, and here the client means the client receiving the block. So not the client which was originally putting the block on the network. We don't know that. This is the client which was receiving the block. And we see these kind of differences. So as you can see, there are differences. And we already know that these differences are partly due to semantics. So the meaning of the timestamp that we have as a latency is different in different clients. We know that there are some clients, I think Prism is one of these, which are exposing the timestamp when they receive the message on the gossip sub. Others are doing all the processing that they have to do, and then they are exposing the timestamps. I don't know, this is just a guess. Others might have low priority reporting thread, so they might just have a timestamp which is very different. So we don't know the things behind, but we have different curves for different clients. We were also looking into attestation latencies. I'm not showing that now. The peculiarity is that these are very small messages, but we have lots of them. So we have much more data to plot from. This is what we have seen with the big blocks. And then looking into this, we had also some nice things, which Leo will present. So let me.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Leo. Yep.
Okay. Yes. So looking into this, at some point, we started looking into the data sets that we have with the group at Mega Labs, and we discovered that we observe also other big blocks present in the network. Can you pass to the next slide? And we noticed that these were out of the period where we were doing this experiment of injecting large transactions to make large blocks in purpose. And so we noticed that there were organic blocks that were really, really big in Mainnet. And so we did a study on this. So here we collected data over the last 6 months, so from March till the end of August. And we found that we have over 100,000 blocks that are larger than 200 kilobytes, knowing that the average block size in Mainnet is about 100 kilobytes. So this is about 1.3 million slots, and so 109,000 is about 8% of the blocks have these kind of big sizes. The biggest block was in this 6 months of period was sent about 15 days ago on August 22nd. You have the slot on the screen, and the size is about 2.3 megabytes, which is really, really big. I mean, it's surprising. At the beginning, we didn't know that we could have such big blocks. Next slide. We can see here, just to give you an idea of the distribution of the big blocks. This is all for blocks that are over 250 kilobytes. Here we don't see really well the distribution on the right. So if we pass to the logarithmic scale, we can have a little bit more understanding of what we see on the side of large blocks. Next slide. And so yeah, what is interesting about these large blocks and the fact that we can find them organically in Mainnet is that we can use them to compare. Anybody can basically use them to compare how block propagation happens for this kind of large block. So in this figure, you see, for example, that between blocks of 250 kilobytes versus 2.5 megabytes, it takes about 2 more seconds, more or less, in average. And so, these kind of studies, I think help a lot as we move toward, dank sharding and very large blocks. And again, it would be nice to have like some kind of homogeneity on how the different clients report this, so that we see more clear distribution and we can compare results across clients. And yeah, just to finish, we have some resources here. So if you have questions, we'll be happy to answer. Yep, go ahead.
Just wanted to add that on this slide, the time axis, the x-axis is logarithmic scale. So that's why you see a different shape from the previous one. So you have the 1 second is the 1,000, and then the 10 seconds is 10,000, and you see a logarithmic time scale. Yeah. So
Don has a question. Is this the compressed or uncompressed size? Because the size shown on Etherscan, I believe, is uncompressed.
Yeah, we have discussed this in chats. This is the uncompressed size. So now we are collecting the compressed sizes, and we will plot it as a function of compressed size. Actually, both matter. So compressed size matters on network, uncompressed size matters in the compression and processing. So it's also interesting to see those differences.
Thanks.
Yeah, we were sharing these links in the issue description, so you can go and check out. These are Jupyter notebooks, so you can play with them.
Great. This is awesome. Any other questions for the Codex guys? Obviously, I think one thing that we need to contextualize here is these are sent as single payloads versus the method of serving blobs via them being broken up into the different subnets is going to have a different impact on how they're propagated, but still, I think it's very valuable. Yeah, so any questions?
Yeah, maybe in the meantime, just to reiterate from our side, the goal of this was partly to look into also into how small messages will propagate, and for that we were looking into the attestation latencies. We didn't put it in the slides, but that's somewhere between the two. We should also have an understanding of how breaking up things will work in future constructs.
There's a question about the description of the methodology used to collect latencies data. I think this is not described in the notebook links that they are in here in the slide, but we're writing right now a post, and probably it's going to be ready in a couple of days, describing all the methodology.
Yeah, in the first link, block size versus latency, you have at the beginning you have a link to the EF post about the percent nodes and the setup. So that answers part of the question, and then you have our methodology to derive these results. Maybe it's important to say that behind such a distribution curve here, you actually have several random variables. You have at some point the block was put in the network, then the network was getting to all the nodes in which we are sampling in a few points, and then this is an aggregate of many blocks of data collected from many blocks. So for the one specific block, this curve would be steeper. But when you are adding it up for several blocks, each one finding its path, then you are getting a different shape.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, from our point of view, it would be really interesting to understand who is reporting how, and maybe agree on unifying this, or if just exposing more timestamps, so that we have better data.
Right around the client disparities we're seeing here.
Yeah, around these differences, which are kind of huge differences. So, but we already know from some of the teams that there are differences. It's just we don't have the full picture of who's doing what in their reporting.
Yeah. Or I guess since we're here, are clients immediately aware of like the disparities here? You know, why maybe Lodestar reports a much longer number? Like maybe it has to do with finishing up a database operation or something like that.
Yeah, we are aware. We'll look into it.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not even sure the timestamp is coming from you or it's coming from the logging or the reporting. So that can be also a thing. For example, you are reporting on a low priority and then it's getting timestamped much later. So it's just would be good to know these.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anything else for on these experiments? I think the Codex guys would be happy to take questions asynchronously as well.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. This is great. Do we have other inputs other than these large block experiments to take into consideration as we have the conversation about 484 mainnet parameterization? You know, our DevNets work, our devnets are also toys compared to probably mainnet topology. Or is there any comments about the devnets and 3.6 there?
So I guess it might be interesting on devnets if we had blocks with like that like took longer for the execution to happen. So like we could test how different execution times impact our block processing times.
Because this is going to impact propagation, probably not, because propagation happens before that, but it might impact like local import times, which are relevant to attestations, or what?
Yeah, also block production, which would be like the first input to propagation.
Right. Yeah, and I guess kind of to Itan's question, if you're receiving 3.6 blocks at 3 seconds and you have really long processing, you might actually not attest to them correctly. So I see how it does compound. Okay, so there's not a lot of, I think there's probably not a lot of inputs that we have beyond our observing what we've just discussed. And maybe there's also not a lot of more updated thoughts on it. So conversation's a little late today. I guess what I'll say is we need to keep having this conversation over the next few weeks. And because the lack of conversation here doesn't make me feel like we can try to make a decision yet. Am I reading the room right?
Yeah, I could say that my feeling is just probably we haven't did already the tests that are needed, the chaos that needs to be created to actually exercise those bad and difficult paths. The current devnet has been used for bug fixing so far. This is my feeling. So I think the actual test on these things should start now that clients are kind of more reliable and we can actually fire stable test nets and then start playing with these partitions and delays.
All right. So chaos and load from here can help inform the conversation. Okay, this is something maybe we won't bring it up next week, but we bring it up in a couple weeks to at least make sure that we're getting the data that we want. Anything else on for parameterization? Anything else on Devnet? Okay, Itan, you can take it away with the 7495 updates, and it looks like Dapline threw on something last minute to talk about after.
Yeah, sure. So as part of this SSC transaction and receipts work that, I started this a long time ago, maybe already half a year, I think. But the current approach, I tried to unify these unions and normalized approaches, and I created a construct called a stable container. Like it's an SSC container, serializes very similarly, but it can have optional fields. And they get skipped during serialization, but they still consume space in the Merkle tree. So what this allows us to do is essentially to have something similar to a union where some objects have some of the optional field set and other objects have other field set. But the cool thing is, as part of the Merkle tree, the common fields that are used, they always Merkleize at the same location. So if you have a Merkle-proof verifier for some of the fields that like just doesn't care about the rest. That verifier doesn't need to change all the time anymore. So I was wondering whether this stable container could be used for other purposes as well. One idea is to, for example, attach it to the execution payload header so that we don't have to worry about those bumps anymore, where every time we add new fields and it reaches another power of 2, we break all the verifiers, or like some other structures as well. And also in the Verkle specs, there is currently an older version, like these optional fields are there to as part of the transition logic, I think. And there we could also use this stable container just because it's much more compact in serialization. The optional fields there, they just don't consume any space. And like a zeroed field, or I think the optional also doesn't use space. So yeah, whatever. I mean, question there is just I'm looking for reviews for EIP 7495, and also maybe an estimate how complicated it would be to get it into the various SSC libraries. Yeah, channel in Discord, if there are questions, is the typed transactions channel, or just in the EIP, there is also a discussion link at the top. That's all for now.
Yeah, any questions? All right, take a look at it and follow up asynchronously. Thanks a ton. Dapline.
Hey, so I'm linking this PR that opened a while ago, and I'm bringing it up now because it only makes sense if we want to do this for Denkun, which I know there is zero appetite on changing anything for Denkun at the moment, but I think the PR holds some merit. And I think at least Dankart and some other people showed interest to do something like this. So at least I want to bring it to everyone's attention that this is something that we could do, and it only makes sense if we do it for Denkun. So if we want to do it for Denkun, we have to do it basically either now or very soon. So the background here is, as you know, the network is growing at a very rapid rate. And if we don't do anything about it, it will reach levels that could trigger some scenarios that we may be problematic. The way to address this on the long term is changing the rewards curve, but doing this would require a level of research that we cannot afford for Denkun. So it will take at least for the next fork, which would be, being optimistic, mid 2024, maybe later, which at what point the network may be at a level that, again, triggers these undesirable scenarios, which is basically too much ETH stake and dangerous capture by LSDs, and also having state size to a level that clients cannot cope with it. None of these problems is truly catastrophic, but it could be. So the idea of this PR is, let's limit the churn so that at least we buy some time. And whenever we come up with a definitive solution in a year or half a year or 2 years, the network is still at a size that could be manageable. And specifically, if we go for some solution, such as changing the rewards curve to encourage stakers to leave, if we already have such a big validator set, I think it will be rather complicated to undo. So again, just take a look at the proposal, think about it, and if we want to do something about it, we should do it now.
Thanks. Comments?
Can you quickly explain for layman what this proposal is about?
Yes, so this proposal has the intention to limit the growth of the validator set just by limiting the churn coefficient. So currently the growth is exponential. With more validators, the amount of validators that we allow to enter the set is proportional to that, to the number of active. So what this proposal specifically introduces is a max, so that the maximum number of validators that are allowed per epoch remains constant and doesn't keep growing with the set size.
Just a note, so it the churn quotient grows with the set size because essentially as a function of the set size, to keep the same security parameters with respect to the weak subjectivity period, you can change the set size only so much per unit time as a function of the set size. And so that's why it does grow with it. Obviously, there are other considerations coming into play these days. So it bounds it to be linear as a band-aid, while people think more deeply about more sustainable solutions.
Yeah, this proposal is the minimum that we can do that could be considered somewhat fair. Like any other solution that tries to mitigate the problem becomes either really political or security sensitive and would require more analysis. I think this is probably the only one that we could accept without a long time looking into it. I mean, there are definitely some considerations that Danny raised about fairness for people that want to enter before and after this change, but I think it's not incredibly significant compared to what could happen downstream.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't think there's a like perfect band-aid. And so if there's an appetite for band-aid, this seems in a reasonable direction. But I'm not gonna throw my hat in the ring too much on if this should modify our spec at this point.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Are there other comments today?
Is this actually going to be considered for Duncan?
The answer is no. No one speaks up and says this is something that has to go in. But here we are talking about it.
Well, in this case, you have to ask the negative question, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, is someone against adding this to the net?
I think I might be. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but my 2 cents generally is that like this is sort of a patch fix, and it is really small, but it's small enough that like we could do it in its own fork in something equivalent to like a difficulty bomb delay or something. I think it'd be better to put more effort into a better fix, and also like I don't know. Clients are continuing to improve how they handle larger validator set sizes, stuff like that. Yes, I don't think I'm in favor of it at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that is, happens late in the cycle. Urgent or potentially urgent things come up. I think at this point, given the state, like the default is to do nothing, and that I'd want a pretty loud, we need to do this, if we're going to derail that. Obviously, if I'm misreading the room, then be loud and tell me otherwise. But I think we would need people to be speaking up. And if that means review the proposal and sit on it a week and we talk about this, asynchronously, or even bring it up on the execution layer call, that's okay. But I do think that we're at the default stable spec unless it's quite a verbal consensus here to switch. Okay. I do encourage you to look at and review this proposal. There are high urgency problems in this domain, and it's going to be probably a big part of the Electra conversation if nothing's done now. So let's continue the conversation. And if this does bubble up as critical high urgency after others have reviewed this and thought more deeply about it this week, speak up. Thank you, Dapline.
What is really worrying me, I would just add one thing, is that sometimes things happens non-linearly. So you reach some level of things and things go bad very quickly. So it's something that there definitely is let us thinking for a while, and I'm personally not against this proposal. But we also have Olski testnet right about to be launched. Maybe this could give us more insights and prioritize it eventually in the future.
Right, I want to mention, if it's not clear, maybe in the proposal there are two angles. So one is the state growth and what can that cost to clients and performance, and the other one is the economics of it. Specifically, if you don't believe that Lido having a hold of 50% of all the ETH in existence is healthy, there is a train of thought that the only way to prevent that is by limiting overall ETH stake, because of the one winner takes all dynamics. So just to consider.
Yeah, I was thinking only on the technical side of it at the moment.
It's not actually, I think, abundantly clear to me that by just changing the total amount of ETH that it will be staked via different rate limiting mechanisms, that would change Lido dominance. It may be tougher because you might have stickier short-term equilibriums, but it's not, I don't know if that changes like the convergence there or the incentives there.
Yeah, it
yes,
doesn't change the
I'm very
dominance,
concerned about that,
it prevents Lido from basically having a higher market cap than Ethereum in terms of liquid ETH.
This is just slowing like the process of that happening, though. It doesn't actually change it from happening.
I think the argument would be it slows what happens to then have a more sustainable solution before the equilibriums are totally out of whack. Donkra did say in the chat he's in favor, but And if we don't do it, this probably becomes like a very high urgency thing right after the fork. How complex is the chain? Yeah, it's essentially it's not quite a parameter change. It's like a parameter addition and conditional on at the fork, it being constant rather than a function, but it's a couple lines. Okay, is there anyone's suggestion on how to move forward? Do nothing, let it marinate for a week. Make sure the spec is correct with tests in case we do want to bring this up again next week. Like what's the path?
I'm not sure if this was discussed on ACDC before, but on the execution side, we typically try and not include something in the fork the first time it's brought on the call, just so folks have, you know, a couple weeks to review it. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously, the farther we push this out, the closer we are to like test nets and wanting to have specs finalized. But I don't know if, given the small size of this change and like this sort of weak-ish consensus that there seems to be around it, it might make sense to, yeah, delay another couple weeks before officially including it.
So I want to point out that this is not the first time this is brought up. This was brought up in call 113 on July 11th for the first time.
Is this something that we can put as a special agenda item on the execution layer call in 1 week? And people can go back to their teams and talk about it and either come with like a strong yo or strong yes from various teams so that we can push ourselves out of the murky equilibrium we sit in today. And in the meantime, we can review the spec and make sure that we're good on tests in the event that this were to go in.
Or maybe here, if Dankar wants to help on writing a piece to help get the arguments through on why this is important.
I will leave that to Dankar if he wants to. Okay. If we're sitting in like the super uncertain zone in a week, then this isn't going to happen. So talk with your teams. Please try to form a consensus on whether this is, you know, verbally precisely where y'all stand. Either as a team, that'd be great, or if y'all have differing opinions to express those. But if you can express those in 1 week time, we can make this decision. Cool. Thank you, Dapline. Anything else for discussion today? Barnabas.
OSK launches in 1 week, as in 8 days. Next week, Friday is the launch day. So hopefully client teams can make a release before the launch day and everyone is ready to go.
Very exciting. Thank you.
And if you're a Genesis validator and don't know about the coordination group, then please reach out.
Okay, anything else for today? Great, thank you. And big ask, talk to your teams, sit on this proposal, come with strong opinions on the execution layer call in 1 week time. Thanks, everyone. Talk to y'all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thanks, bye.
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 Thank you.